Welcome to episode 94 of the LMPD Pod, the Left of the Dial podcast. I'm Slick, along with my friend Richard. How you doing, Richard?
Hey, good morning. It's coffee club over here in Oakland.
That's right. We're doing this on Saturday morning. I guess early your time, not so early my time, but still morning for both of us.
Yeah, it's like a rock and roll pajama party.
That's right. We're the morning crew.
That's right, man.
Yeah. We're the zoo crew. We're the LOTD Pod zoo crew today. We have zany sound effects and probably some fart jokes coming.
Yeah,
So.
probably some casual misogyny, but
right.
If you're to hold to that, no, we won't ever do that stuff.
And we're going to have a call in from a stand-up comedian that's in town. We'll be interviewing him.
Playing the casino. That's right.
And getting out the sound effects big time for that one. Deluxe.
Oh yeah.
No, we're not doing that this week.
No, hell is being stuck in a cab to the airport and having to listen to that crap. So.
What we were actually doing this week is another. So we don't have a name for this format yet. This is the second installment of albums that we want you to make sure that you know these are classics, even though they might not be on the registry.
It's
like
just
the
checking
national.
in, just making sure, you know.
Yeah, we want you to know. So if you aren't familiar with this album, it's an album you need to know. We don't have a name for it yet. Like last time, we just.
And what album are we discussing?
The Modern Lovers by the Modern Lovers.
Oh, good idea.
Fronted by Jonathan Richman, who you may have heard of. You may have heard us talk about him a time or two. You may have heard us mention this album a time or two, but we're going to do it in full this time. Yeah, and the last time we called it "Hey, that's a classic" for Iggy Pop, "Lust for Life." I don't feel like that name has the right stuff, but don't know what to call it yet. Maybe classic AF.
Yeah, you know, yeah, sure. But,
Something
like
that.
Modern Lovers, 1976, right?
Yeah, recorded in 1971, not released until 1976. Go figure. It's one of those albums that I guess not unlike Big Star. You look at Big Star's third record, that spent a lot of years on the shelf, didn't get released.
Yeah,
I think
kind of a lost record for a little while, and then when it was not a lost record, hugely influential with everybody that we ended up knowing and loving. So yeah, this is punk rock in its infancy. I mean, it doesn't necessarily like predate New York Dolls or anything, but I think that
I mean, recording wise, I think it does. It does precede the Dolls, but not like the Stooges or, I mean, certainly the Velvet Underground is a big part of what it comes out of. Jonathan Richman was a huge Velvet Underground fan.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think it's like kind of the missing link between, Sex Pistols and Velvet Underground, that in between proto-punk kind of stage, and it totally rocks, man. This is such a rockin' record. I had it on whilst having breakfast and coffee and listening to like She Cracked and Roadrunner. You've heard Roadrunner covered a bunch of times by everyone from Sex Pistols to
Joan Jett.
Yeah, and Pablo Picasso gets covered all the time. These are great songs, and they're really different songs, right? I mean, Jonathan Richman, as you and I know, JoJo has like this other set of rules when it comes to songwriting, and I think that this is a great example. So you have songs about. I think "Girlfriend" is a good example. He's saying like he wants like a nice, healthy relationship with a young woman, and not just like a rock and roll fling.
Hmm.
And and he's talking about how just like the little things they're really contrary to a lot of you know um, a lot of rock and roll songwriting that you would expect from like a significantly loud group.
Yeah, well, and it is one of those things where you think, oh, is this where Ian MacKaye got the straight edge idea from? Um, Actually, oddly enough, I think Ian MacKaye got that idea more from Ted Nugent than Jonathan Richman, but it does
The
seem like it.
intersection of the Nuge and Modern Lovers, yeah, that's
Y-
weird.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean that's honestly true. Ian MacKaye was a big Ted Nugent fan. Uh, so take that as you will. But yeah, I mean it is a lot. Like for especially considering somebody that was hanging out. Jonathan Richman hanging out with the Velvet Underground at an early age because he is such a big fan. Um, but definitely wasn't doesn't or unless things changed in his life, it doesn't seem like he was really partying with the Velvet Underground.
I don't I yeah, I think he's always been on that path, and yeah, to read about his story, being, a teenager and hearing the Velvet Underground and liking them so much that he like seeks them out in New York and becomes friends with them. Like, wow, that's the dream, man. That is cool. And then to hear this record as a result of those interactions and influences, it's magic.
Yeah, speaking of interactions and also the contrast, between Jonathan Richman and the people he was hanging out with. So, just kind of breezing over the Wikipedia entry for the album.
Sponsored by Wikipedia
That's right.
and Spotify.
They're a not for profit, so I guess that's fine. And it's a resource I can't say I don't use, so there you go. No, but there's an interesting little story in the Wikipedia entry about Jonathan Richman playing miniature golf with Graham Parsons the day before Graham Parsons died. Uh,
Ouch. Yeah, that's
yeah,
tough.
which like I knew the Jonathan Richman song "California Desert Party" is about Graham Parsons, like his wake that they had
Yeah.
in Joshua Tree, and so I knew there was a connection, but it's just kind of interesting to picture Graham Parsons and Jonathan Richman playing miniature golf.
Yeah, I guess he was a really good friend of the band.
Mhm.
And uh, and that's kind of the Harvard connection. You have, I think, both David Robinson and Jerry Harrison, who are two really, really important parts of the Modern Lovers. And I'm specifically talking about the album The Modern Lovers, a self-titled album right now,
Mhm.
where you have this really, cool sound where you have Velvet Underground electric guitars, and then you have this great kind of overdriven organ sound. Jerry Harrison, who later goes on to be in Talking Heads.
What? Who? Talking Heads?
What?
Who?
And
Is that a band name?
the name of the band is Talking Heads.
Oh,
And then you have, great backbeat. You have
so you're not talking about news personalities,
no, no, no. And yeah, so great backbeat. David Robinson, who later goes on to be in the Cars, another great Boston band. But yeah, both
Cars.
Jerry Harrison and David Robinson are Harvard guys, and they were pals with Graham Parson um, going back to their kind of school days before anyone was in a band.
Yeah, which if I remember right, I don't know that Graham was there that long, so
No,
they
I
didn't
think the
probably
the
have.
typical trajectory of like rich kids that go to good schools and then go on to form like iconic bands is that they go to they get into Harvard and then attend like 3 classes and then drop out, but
Right, yeah,
and then form an awesome band that you're going to be talking about for the next 200 years.
yeah. So they didn't have a whole lot of time to form that friendship, but they did.
Yeah, which goes to the point, college is more than just going to class. It's about you know meeting people.
Sometimes that's all it is, really.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Well, so going track by track here. The most well-known track, I think, easily is Roadrunner. That is the lead-off track of the album, and yeah, I mean, Roadrunner certainly is a song I've heard a million times. Doesn't really get old. I think it even came up on, like Rudy and I did a show we titled Groundhog Day one time, where it's just like songs we can listen to every day and not get sick of. And I think Roadrunner was on my list for that.
Yeah, totally. It's a simple song musically, but it's got a lot of depth to it. And yeah, I mean, every time I come back to it, I feel like I get something else out of it. And yeah, Roadrunner, it rocks, and it's such a simple, um, but important part of kind of rock and roll in general. Songs
Yeah.
about, uh, want to get out on the open road, get out of my hometown, and listen to the radio.
Well, not necessarily get out of my hometown because it's because what I was just about to say actually is that it really establishes JoJo's worldview. He all of the things he loves. Like there are
He's in
so
love
many,
with Massachusetts. Yeah,
yeah, so many points in this album are like him saying I love this, I love this, love that. But yeah, you got I love Massachusetts. I'm in love with the radio. Modern Moonlight, all of that stuff. So it's just a guy cruising around and just loving it.
yeah, and if you dive into the JoJo oeuvre, that's kind of his MO. Like, he's a really positive guy who's
Mhm.
more interested in telling you about what he appreciates than what he dislikes.
Yeah, and yeah, so it certainly establishes the Jonathan Richman character. I think it's safe to say. So good place to start. Great track. Track one is probably the one you're going to hear the most anyway. So definitely good. And I guess the one thing that I want to say right off the bat with the album is this album is so jam packed that there are like four or five tracks that didn't make the cut that I love just as much as what's on the album. But we'll get to those.
Can
But
we just briefly talk about the history of this record?
yeah, I mean, as far as well, to begin with, there were the tracks like it is culled together from different sessions. And actually a lot of what's on this album, I think maybe even half of what is on the album, or maybe 4 out of the 10 tracks, or 4 out of the 9 tracks, I should say, um, are are just demos. Like they John Cale produced some demos, and I think Roadrunner might have been one of those. Is that right?
I think so. I guess what I'm getting at is that this band that sounded like this recorded a bunch of demos over the early '70s, um, and got pushed around to different kind of labels that were interested in recording demos, like you were saying, and uh, and then kind of split up by a couple years before this record came out. And then when it was about to come out, the only person pretty much left in Modern Lovers was Jonathan Richman, and he didn't want to rock anymore, and
Well,
so he.
yeah, I mean, I did want to, I did want to discuss that, but kind of felt like it would come into play more when we get to some of the more, like I didn't want to backtrack on that. But yeah, I mean, since we brought it up, yeah, so this actually goes back to something we discussed a couple weeks ago too, when we're talking about Frank Black, the Frank Black solo stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And he has a song, or had a song, has a song. He still has it. He still owns it. He wrote it. Uh, that it was called "The Man Who Was Too Loud." It was about Jonathan Richman and how he was doing this loud music and didn't want to keep on going that route. Which like, yeah, the reason why I didn't want to bring that up immediately is because it kind of comes into play a lot later. But yeah, I mean, to kind of say it briefly in a way that we can come back to without really backtracking, is that a lot of what makes this album great, unfortunately, is something that I don't think Jonathan Richman himself is that proud of. I don't think he's very proud of this album. This is more like parting thoughts, though. So I don't want to I don't want to let the cat out of the bag yet.
Well, I think it's
Spoiler.
I think it's important about and I think for me, one of the things that's kind of special about this record is that it is really spontaneous demos, and that it is a lost record and fits into this group of uh, records, movies, books where the person primarily credited with creating it is like, this is awful. I want to bury it. No one should ever see this. And then
Mm.
everybody loves it.
Yeah, and it's super unfortunate, and I still like Jonathan Richman fine, but this is again these seem more like the summary. But yeah, I mean it's if you go see him live, you're not going to see him do these songs, and I think that that's unfortunate. I think it's like it's just kind of too bad that the guy that created this stuff doesn't get as much enjoyment out of it as you or me or other music nerds. Yeah, but that's one of the unfortunate things about this album, because it is just absolutely one of my favorite all time.
Yeah, it's just a moment frozen in time, and yeah, I respect that about JoJo, that he's kind of a moving forward guy. He's not gonna look back and do like the modern lovers playing the album from front to
Yeah.
back for
Well, no, I don't. I don't
$80
want him.
tickets.
I don't want him to be a nostalgia act, but I do want him to see what I see. Like I want him to be proud of the work because it is great. I
Yeah,
mean,
I don't think it's specific to this record, but having seen him, I think I've seen Jonathan Richman maybe 6 times, and um, he he doesn't really. He always wants to be playing either new stuff, it seems like, or things that he's interested in. So he doesn't do like the greatest hits tour. I think
well,
he did
but he will do.
briefly,
He will
but
do some. He'll do like dancing in the lesbian bar, or Egyptian reggae, or those hits. He does those hits. He just doesn't do the modern lovers hits.
yeah, yeah, and different tours in different years. I think he's more amenable to. I think the last time I saw him, he was just doing kind of like Parisian and Spanish folk songs,
Mhm.
pretty much. So anyway, he's a really enigmatic dude, and you get that right off the bat with Roadrunner. That this isn't going to be the album about like scoring drugs, trying to get with like backstage girls or something, and there's I think with JoJo, there's this he's trying to like capture the effervescence of being like a youngster,
Yeah.
and he just really nails it on this lead off track.
Yeah, and then so track two, thematically, you're continuing, or actually, this is actually more establishing another one of his themes. So the opening line of Astral Plane is, "Tonight I'm all alone in my room, never getting the girl." Like that is such a prominent Jonathan Richman theme. And here, the way to get the girl is to meet her on the astral plane. I guess he has a plan, like it's an alternate reality sort of thing.
Yeah. The to briefly explain the astral plane, it is kind of the shared kind of dream time kind of world that people can access, I guess, in like remote viewing, um, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and a cool song. Yeah, kind of a cool track too. You come out of the rocker, you bring it down a little bit, and something more mid tempo. Then track three. I Here's where the running order. There's always, even on an album I thoroughly love. I always have picks or nits to pick on running order. But the next track is Old World, which to me should come after the Modern World, and there's a track called Modern World. There's a track called Old World, um, and track three is Old World. It discusses how he still loves the old world, still loves the 50s, um, which is the old world. He's not talking about like ancient Rome or anything like that. And should come after the modern world because I think it should be established since these themes play such a big part in the album. It should be established that he loves the modern world before he goes back and says, "I still love the old world too."
I see where you're going with this, but I'm gonna disagree, and I'm gonna say that now that I think about it, in terms, I've never really like picked apart like, oh well, I would sequence it differently. But looking
Uh,
at the running order, I see it as a compilation of 45s. So Roadrunner A side, Astral Plane B side, Old World A side, Pablo Picasso double A side, She Cracked
oh, definitely I said.
A side, Hospital totally B side.
I'm
I mean,
I'm
not that
going
it's not a
I'm
bad
going.
song. It's just like not the single, you know.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to dispute that that was what was intended.
Oh yeah. I'm just I'm just having fun
Just a
looking at.
flight of fancy.
It's like wow, that totally makes sense if it's like in a compilation of 45 A and B sides.
Yeah, I would say modern world should be on side one, and then old
Old
world should
World
be on side
side
two.
B. Yeah, right on, man.
Okay, but anyway, yeah, I mean that's those are the themes. So the modern world plays a bigger part thematically, but he's just going to drop in a mention for the old world because he still digs that too. Um, then closing out side one, Pablo Picasso, and if there's a second track that you're familiar with already, it's probably Pablo
Oh
Picasso
yeah, man. Everyone's
or
seen Repo
Pablo
Man.
Picasso,
Yeah.
should I say?
So yeah, and one thing, and you can listen to and really hear in Pablo Picasso is, just how much Velvet Underground really plays a part in their sound. Those guitars in Pablo Picasso
Hmm.
are totally Velvet Underground riffs in a good way,
Right.
an homage. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's very garagey guitar sound. Yeah, and it's funny. Like I don't know how else to describe it. It's a funny song. It's just I guess discussing the funniest part of the song to me is okay. So the refrain of the song was Pablo Picasso is never called an asshole, or if you say it like Pablo Picasso, it sounds more closer to a rhyme. Um, but then when he drops in the line toward the end, not like you, just that's the part that like there are so many songs. The one thing about Jonathan Richman is that I'm not a big fan of comedy in songs, and that was kind of the point of the show that we did, where just like we focused on the songs that make us laugh.
Right, right.
Hardly, I don't know that anybody does it any better for me than Jonathan Richman because like he can still make me laugh at something like that after I've heard the song thousands of times. Um, that's kind of amazing, really. Like just to keep on hearing something over and over and still getting that humor out of it.
Right, yeah,
And
it's weird and it's interesting, but it's not a joke, you know? It's not
yeah,
jokey.
he
Um,
just
yeah.
yeah, I mean, the key is like there just seems to be something weird in his circuitry. Like his wiring is just not the same as anybody else's.
Yeah, Pablo Picasso in this song is rolling down the street in his Eldorado.
Yeah.
He was the color of an avocado, you know? It's like, yeah, man. I'm there with Jonathan Richman the entire time.
Well, the color of the avocado is actually kind of an awesome line because what he's what he's saying is that they were green with envy,
Yeah, yeah.
and so it's just kind of a nice little subtle way of expressing that. Um,
I think Pablo Picasso would have liked this song. I think he missed it by about 6 years before I think he Pablo Picasso, I think he dies in like 67 or something. Um, so I guess more like 9 years, but yeah, it would have been nice to, you know. I think he would endorse it.
I
I think
wonder.
if Pablo Picasso were still alive when this record came out, he would have painted the cover. Serious.
Yeah, I should check Pablo Picasso's Wikipedia page to see if he ever indeed was called an asshole. To see if this is
I'd say
historically
that
accurate.
is a you know, as a gambling man, I would bet on that.
That he never was.
That he was. Yeah.
Oh, that
Yeah.
he was. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think he probably was. We don't go to this album for historical accuracy. That's not really what it's about.
But if you are interested in learning more about Pablo Picasso, I highly recommend the Simon Schama documentary series called The Power of Art. And you can find the Pablo Picasso episode on YouTube.
There you go. There's a plug.
Simon Schama, my guy, represent.
All right, so that closes out side one. Any further thoughts on side one?
No, I love it. I mean, it's a cool record, and yeah, it's kind of disjointed, but I mean that makes it fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's disjointed because it's coming from these different sessions. I think all of side one are probably from those John Cale sessions.
Right, you have John Cale, you have Kim Fowley in there somewhere. I don't know exactly who's responsible for what.
Yeah, I don't know if any of the Kim Felly stuff ended up on the album. I think those are bonus tracks. Not sure. Uh, yeah, because the Kim Felly sessions were, and by the way, Kim Felly, I don't think I'd probably want to hang out with him, but
Yeah, I would actively avoid him.
but uh, but anyway, yeah, it looks like those sessions were from 1973 and ended up being bonus tracks. So I don't think any of those ended up actually on the album. But some good stuff that we'll get to. Um, even though, yeah, actively avoid that guy. He should be avoided. He's probably not alive at this point, I suppose.
Probably not.
Side two, opening up side two. Kind of kicking up a bit. She Cracked is the opening track, and yeah, I mean that's really as punky as it gets on this album. Really cool track. Really love She Cracked.
I love it too. And yeah, you have, you know, going back to what we were talking about with the legacy of the band. Yeah, it's like this, you know, 3 minute under 3 minute punk rock song, and you hear it covered by Susie and the Banshees. They do a great version of it on their covers album back in the day. I think you have let's see, a great Echo and the Bunnymen version of it. You know, yeah, it's totally a rockin' song, and um, You can connect the dots really easily.
And going back to the themes, which we never really are going to leave the themes because they're just all over the place. But it's the girl that he's really into, and really into it because she understands him and she understands the European things from 1943, which I like the descriptions. Like he likes that sensibility. He's attracted to that sensibility.
Yeah, that's a weird line, isn't it?
Yeah, she understood the European things from 1943.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, kind of. I suppose if you were writing your college paper about this, you would connect that back to Pablo Picasso.
Possibly. But yeah, I mean, European things from 1943 seems specific and vague at the same time, which makes it a pretty interesting line.
Yeah, yeah. Wow.
But yeah, song rocks hard, and it really grabs you by the throat in a good way to open up side two, I think.
I think if you were really going for um the kind of baiting the people who read too much into this stuff, he would say that she understands European things from 1937. Because then now, because Guernica is from 1937, so um, and then be like, oh, that's a connector to Pablo Picasso.
We'll just have to write JoJo an email to see.
Yeah, or go to Reddit or something. There's got to be the Reddit subthread about like, what does he mean? It has to have a meaning.
Then I would say easily the darkest and uh, most somber point of the record. Like really the only truly dark and somber moment on the record, the song "Hospital," which um, I think it's pretty easy to infer. So we talked about how Jonathan Richman was definitely more straight edge. Even though straight edge wasn't really a thing at the time, but definitely more straight edge than his counterparts. And it does seem like what he's referring to is, uh, a love interest that is in the hospital, presumably for like an overdose or something.
Yeah, yeah.
And
It's a great song, and yeah, um, really paints that picture for you.
yeah, uh, yeah, and someone I care about next track and kind of kind of kind of in the same vein a little bit.
Yeah, and it ties back to a lot of what he's saying about like, I don't want like a superficial relationship. I want, someone to care about. And
Yeah. And here's a little bit of a running order nitpick thing again, because then after that you have girlfriend, which we're kind of getting that same idea back to back. So it would be kind of nice to you could have modern world in this slot, or no, or I mean old world in this slot, right? And then
yeah, you could definitely overdo a theme in a record, but yeah, you could move some of these songs around for sure.
but girlfriend to me is like the best on the theme for that, the girlfriend, like the idealized girl to him. Like this is I think to me his best song going with that theme.
Yeah, it's kind of slow,
But
and but it's
I
yeah.
don't think in a bad way.
No, no, it's fun.
And and a couple of things I have to say about this. One, it again with the kind of subtle humor that you don't, you might not even pick up on it the first time. Although think you probably would, but it's not that easy to pick up on. But just the chorus, would GIRLFREN.
Right.
Just not just misspelling it, but not even putting the D on the end either.
Yeah.
Um, just because those letters don't really fit in with the.
Yeah, man.
Okay, well, and then the other thing that I have to mention about this song is really love the solo. Doubt that it gets any attention at all, but I have to say I'm a big fan of the guitar solo on this song. I don't know where I rank it in my all-time favorites, but it's definitely on the list.
Yeah, I've never really stopped to like, pick apart the who's playing what in this record, but or on this track, but there's some really tasteful piano in the background too. Presumably Jerry Harrison,
Hmm.
switching out the kind of like overdriven Farfisa for or Hammond for like a nice, beat up studio piano.
Yeah, one thing that we didn't quite mention. I mean, we mentioned Jerry Harrison on Roadrunner certainly. Also, what he does on She Cracked, I think, is pretty cool. So
Yeah,
just
it's
to
like
backtrack a little bit.
the magic sauce of Modern Lovers for me is just
Mhm.
like, these Velvet Underground like rockers and then this great like buzzing, overdriven, wheezy kind of organ sound that you don't really hear that often. And yeah, it's magic. It's really really cool stuff.
Mhm.
Such a good mix of instrumentation.
Yeah, and I don't really know if there's a link, but you think about what comes later, like Elvis Costello and the Attractions,
Yeah, totally, man. Yeah, yeah.
and I don't know if there's a direct link there, but definitely it seems to have kind of laid the groundwork in a non-direct or direct way to
Yeah,
that.
and I would say Devo too. And another band that like the Modern Lovers started in the early '70s and didn't really get to be known until the late '70s.
Yeah, and then the final track on the album proper is Modern World, which we've already talked about a little bit. So in contrast to talking about the old world on side one, he's talking about how he's in love with the modern world. And another one of those great lines, just on the refrain, put down your cigarette and drop out of BU.
Yeah, that's awesome.
um, yeah, so that closes out the album proper,
It's awesome
and
in that I encourage everyone listening to stop smoking because it's bad for you.
yeah, but it just yeah,
It's punk
um,
rock in a very Jonathan Richman kind of punk rock
exactly.
way. Yeah,
Very unique voice, and but at the same time, I totally, it's relatable yet very distinctive and unique. Um, okay, so then the bonus tracks, which a lot of these, if it, some of these are alternate versions, and I think we can just kind of omit those from the discussion. But a lot of the tracks, which on the CD would have run track 10 through 14, maybe all of these are good enough to be on the album. Just
yeah, totally. I think that they were just excluded because of the limitations of how much
vinyl.
music you can cram onto one side of a vinyl record. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Yeah, and Dignified and Old, I think we've talked about this on the show before.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Another unrequited love song, and like the Astral Plane, it's just there's got to be like this isn't the time or the place, but there's some way to make this work, and in this case, it's a matter of just getting old, like waiting it out for 30, 40 years or whatever,
Yeah, yeah.
and and then when we're both old, she'll be interested in me.
Yeah, man. And if you see JoJo That's probably very true. He's a very healthy, interesting guy. So
And presumably he got the girl that he was interested in back then now, right?
yeah,
That's
I'd like to
if the
think so.
plan
Yeah,
worked.
yeah, the plan worked.
Um, yeah, so it's just again, the circuitry is just very much his own circuitry. He's not wired like anybody else in the world ever. But and there isn't like a better example of that than Dignified and Old.
And yeah, I love that about JoJo, and that um, you know, he was a big influence on a lot of people, including my much beloved Go-Betweens, um, and Robert Forster, one of the primary one of the songwriters in Go-Betweens. At one point published, the 10 rules that you have to follow if you're a rock and roll star, the 10 rules of rock and roll. And one of them is being a rock and roll star is a 24-hour job, uh, 24-hour a day job. And yeah, if you see Jonathan Richman walking into a show, walking out of a show, playing the show, like it's the same guy, and if you dig up interviews with him, which are hard to come by, he's the same guy. So I love that about him, that there's no act. It's just like that's how he is, kind of a,
Yeah.
a really oddball dude.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't, like I did refer to it as a character earlier, but not with any intent, like but yeah, you can't to to be like he is on the record. Like I don't even think anyone could think to make something like that up. It kind of has to be real. It almost has to be real.
Yeah,
Um, but and another thing that's really particularly funny about this song is the chorus, the call and response chorus, the hey kids, the love it. It's a great song.
yeah, yeah. If there were for the upcoming Broadway musical about the life and times of Jonathan Richman, kind of hinges around this as a framing device, I think.
Yeah, but just the tone, because it's like they're not, the call and response is very much uh, a subpar vocal quality, subpar quality vocal, um, which makes it great. But yeah, definitely a song that shouldn't have been on the shelf for however many years that was.
Totally.
Um, Track 11, on the bonus tracks, second bonus track. One of my absolute favorites. Like this song really blew my mind when the first time I heard it. I'm straight,
Yeah.
and yeah, we've talked about that because of how funny I think this song is. Um, Again, I've heard it thousands of times, but it never stops getting me. And
I just love his pronunciation of hippie Johnny. So yeah, and just to explain to our listeners, I'm straight is using that terminology in kind of like a 60s 70s terminology of like not about gender or
right,
sexual preferences.
yeah,
It's about
drug
whether or
use,
not he gets messed up on drugs or alcohol.
yeah. Yeah, and yeah, again, so the straight edge thing, even though straight edge wasn't really a term, but straight, was. Um, yeah, and it's the premise is him calling up a girl he's interested in, but she's going around with a dude known as Hippie Johnny,
Hippie Johnny.
and he doesn't get it. He doesn't understand it, and wants wants to. I guess the phone call is his chance to sell himself, to make his pitch, and he does a very poor job of it, like right off the bat. Um, like the one of the early lines of the phone conversation is, "Here's your chance to make me feel awkward," which is just, it's just so funny because he's just right off the bat, he's just shooting himself in the foot. And it's there's only so much I can say because it needs to be enjoyed on its own. It's just one of the funniest songs ever recorded.
It's great, yeah, and it's 100% JoJo.
Yeah, and another great call and response thing going on here too, and more great Jerry Harrison keyboard work too.
Yeah, totally.
Really cool Jerry Harrison keyboard work on this. In track 12, third bonus track, Government Center, which this is definitely a song you could easily see Jonathan Richman doing later in his career. But of course, it comes from 1973 sessions, so I guess this is what he was advancing into. But it's more like a traditional rock and roll song, but not traditional rock and roll subject matter. It's like this theme song for people working at a government center.
Yeah, and it's in the style of like a 50s rock and roll rave up. It's a cool song.
Yeah, and again, Jerry Harrison, nice work on this too.
Oh man, he's the magic sauce in the Modern Lovers, and Talking Heads too. What a guy!
Yep, he's he's a Hall of Famer. We'll call him a Hall of
Oh
Famer.
yeah, oh yeah.
We haven't really broken ground on the Hall of Fame yet, but when we do,
It's not in Cleveland, guys.
yeah, it's not in Cleveland.
Yeah.
Is it in Des Moines? I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, the Des Moines Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Love that. Love that.
Then track 13. So we talked about how much she cracked rocks. It sounded like I was talking about crack rocks.
Crack
How
rocks.
how much rocking she cracked does, which is side 2, track 1. But I Want to Sleep in Your Arms rocks super hard, like
Yeah, man.
just amazing. And yeah, I would say here less Jerry Harrison, more guitar. Guitar work is pretty awesome, and co-written by one Jim Osterberg. So
What?
how about that? Really cool song. Definitely one that shouldn't have been on the shelf for an eternity. But while it was on the shelf, I'm pretty sure anyway, this time's out right. While it was on the shelf and could have only probably been obtained through like bootleg means or maybe a friend of somebody connected. But the Feelies did a cover of this song.
Oh yeah. How have we not talked about the Feelies yet?
Well, I have. We have talked. You and
I
me have
mean,
talked.
in this show.
No, we have.
I mean, today.
Oh, today?
Yeah. Like this
We're
show that
talking about him now.
we're yeah. Oh, okay. You can get all meta on me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the
Huge. Yeah. Another band that is totally rocking, totally overlooked, and you know, real through line from Velvet Underground, Modern Lovers, and Feelies. Yeah, that's cool.
yeah. Really love I Want to Sleep in Your Arms. It was actually this was the song I was listening to recently where I realized we hadn't talked about this album yet, even though we had discussed doing this show about this album going a while back. But I was listening to this track earlier in the week, and then I was like, oh wait, we still haven't recorded that show. We still have to have that discussion. So that's what brought us here, and here we are.
And here we are.
Yeah. So I again, kind of going back to what we talked about early on. This is one of my favorite all-time albums. you know, like if you ask me what number it is in my ranking, I have no idea because I've never stopped to try and rank albums. Um, but what I do know is I love it. I go back to it often. I mean, super often, more than almost anything. And yeah, and it as we talked about earlier, it's just too bad. I think that after these recordings were made, Jonathan Richman was had his mind on other sounds that he wanted to focus on, and he was so great at this, though. You know, that's it's just too bad that this was such a brief moment in time for him because he was so great at this.
Yeah, and there's some additional like tragedy for me in that you can find this album on Spotify. You can find it on, you can buy a CD of it or whatever, or a overpriced 180 gram pressing. It looks like for $40. But I'd love it if at some point we could really get into the tape archives, and have that like definitive uh, box set or whatever of all the cool because for years and years they just got bounced around to different A&R guys and record labels that wanted to record a bunch of demos. And so I think we see the maybe the best of those demos, but I think there's probably like at least twice as much material that is awesome just lying around somewhere in like a dusty basement.
Yeah, if there is, I definitely I'm with you. I want it all to be out there. Can't
Yeah.
get enough. I cannot
Yeah.
get enough of this.
And there are other Modern Lovers records. We should probably uh you know
Right.
talk about what that's all what who what why.
Yeah, I mean, stuff after this, stuff that they recorded after this, came out on the Berserkly label.
Jonathan Richman and Modern Lovers are kind of the marquee name that Berserkly, based here in Berkeley, had. The label was founded by a gentleman named Matthew King Kaufman. But yeah, so there are other Modern Lovers records that come after the Modern Lovers, but it's not really the same, is it?
No, it isn't as punky for sure. And and even like they re-recorded Roadrunner. uh, I think that was during the Berserkly years. And Roadrunner is like, it drops the tempo down quite a bit, and just not as appealing. It's still, it's a great song. I guess you could slow it down to a crawl and it's still going to be a great song. But like the tempo of it does play a big part, and dropping that tempo down hurts. And yeah, that's just kind of how a lot of those Berserkly recordings are, though. They just don't have the punch.
Right. And a lot of the songs kind of veer. I guess some of the beef that ended up breaking up the band was about Jonathan Richman wanting everything to be more subtle, quieter, and more lyric based. So, like and the rest of the band is wanting to play some rock and roll, and I think the only guy from the original lineup left uh, for Modern Lovers '88 is David Robinson, I think. And and if you listen to the Kit and read about the source of their acrimony, it's like you're too loud. We need to have more simple backbeats. So Modern Lovers '88 has, I think, what sounds like a snare and maybe a hi hat as the entire drum kit, which is what he generally tours behind
Mhm.
now.
And an artist has to follow their heart. So if their heart is telling them to do this, they should probably do that. At the same time, it's really unfortunate because Jonathan Richman left behind something he was truly great at, and yeah, it's unfortunate to me that he abandoned it. But I get it at the same time because you follow the muse.
If you're a real artist, you can't fake that stuff. So you gotta.
I just
Yeah,
wish the muse wanted to rock a little harder. I guess is
yeah, totally, man. That would have been awesome. But that's also part of the magic of this record is that it's kind of this lost classic.
yeah, and not the format that we're using because it's not lost to us, but we'll figure out what we're calling this format. Whatever the case, this is a classic. Uh, I guess an LOTD certified classic, right?
That's right, big stamp on
That's right. So it gets our stamp of approval.
the cassette
Uh,
tape.
Jonathan Richman and Jerry Harrison and the Modern Lovers in the LOTD Pod Hall of Fame.
That's right. And for me, definitely, I'm a huge Cars fan, so I think that that's a band that gets overlooked because they were so successful. But a lot of the cool things about the bands that spring out of this band are you know carried over into songs you've heard on the radio and
Yeah,
hugely
and
influential, and picking up the thread directly from Velvet Underground, and yeah, there's history in this and tons of charm, and I think that that's what really uh, makes me keep coming back to this record. It rocks. It's interesting, but it's totally charming.
yeah, and zero arguments on the Cars for me. I love the Cars. I don't care. Don't care how many millions of times I hear them on the radio. I love the Cars.
Okay,
Uh,
and your pop quiz for the week is Rick who?
Okasek, Okasek, Okasek,
Akasek.
Akasek.
You get a B plus.
Okay, I'll take it.
Okay, yeah, Modern Lovers. You heard it here first. it's a, it's a classic. So go check it out. I
Yeah,
know, and yeah, it's been so cool to meditate on this record with you, Flick, and I love it. What? Thank you.
yeah,
That was a
no problem.
cool show. And
Hey,
as always, a real test of of these shows is like how many times I looked for old copies of the record being discussed on eBay, and yeah, you definitely get a pass on that.
yeah, I have my vinyl copy. I also have vinyl copies of a couple of the Berserkly Modern Lovers albums as well, but definitely have my vinyl copy of the Modern Lovers, which the love that I have. That the downside is you don't get the bonus tracks because it is the vinyl copy, but happy to have that.
Yeah, well done.
Yeah, and we'll be discussing something next week. We're not sure yet what it is, but we'll be back.
Yeah, the keeping them guessing strategy of LOTD Pod.
That's
Tons of
right.
suspense. Yeah.
Yeah, we're just it's a journey, and we'll see what the pit stop is when we get to it. But we'll be here. We'll be here in a week
Oh,
discussing something.
all right. Well, stay tuned, and thanks for hanging out with us on our very special uh, coffee and rock and roll get together. See you
Today.
next week, LOTD Pod listeners. Flick, as always, a pleasure hanging out. We'll do this again next week, and I'll see you in a few.